and that we awarded in the first round. And I'm extraordinarily excited about the not only the quality of the the organizations, but also the enthusiasm of the people who are participating in those programs. We have a lot on tap for you today. We're going to um, hopefully by the end of the day, you will feel comfortable with the new changes that we have made, and that we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. We're also going to be after this later in September. We'll be having a series of in-person workshops that we'll be doing around the state. You can check our website for where those will be. I encourage you to not only attend today's program, but I also encourage you to take a look at those in-person workshops also, because I think that they also will, after today, even add or for a richer experience for you. Before we get going, I'd like to have our team introduce themselves, and then we'll get started right after that.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being part of this application workshop. We're here to help you, so we look forward to your questions in the chat feature today. And also after the workshop, we'll also hang around and answer more questions, and you can unmute yourself at that point. So thank you very much, and we look forward to the workshop today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie B., and I'm a supervisor in the Office of Grants and Local Services. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kyle Bolin. I'm one of the Competitive Review Project Officers, and I'll be presenting today. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, everyone. I'm Christine Schilp. I'm a project officer here at OGALS, and thank you so much for joining us today for this online workshop.
Hello, my name is Julianne. I'm also a project officer here at the Office of Grants and Local Services. Thank you for joining.
Good morning. My name is Esmeralda Bermudez, and I'm also a project officer here at the Office of Grants and Local Services. Thank you so much for attending.
I'm Adela Valdez. I'm a competitive project officer. Thank you for participating with us today. And we also have Nikki Lambert, another competitive project officer, working behind the scenes screen sharing.
Okay. Natalie, I apologize to everyone. I just had my video. I can't even see anyone at this point. Can you pick up where I left off here? I apologize to everyone, but the system just is shutting down. I can.
Sure, Cedric. Okay, so we are excited to talk about the program today. We do call it OEP for short. This workshop will provide guidance for round 2 applicants, in which applications are due December 14 of this year. So December 14 is your application deadline. This is a second round of the program. The prior round 1 funded $57 million in grants for 125 programs. This round will provide an additional $50 million to continue the legacy of this program. The intent is to increase the ability of residents in underserved communities to participate in outdoor experiences within their community, at state parks, and other public lands. The program is a unique opportunity that provides funding for transportation, program operations, staffing, equipment, supplies, and lodging, campsites, capacity costs associated with reaching historically underserved urban and rural communities statewide. The key is it is for program operation only. Construction projects, land acquisition, et cetera, are not eligible. We will go over the eligible costs of this program in detail today within the application guide. Programs that combine multiple activities within an underserved community, including multiple trips to natural areas that span over multiple years, will be more competitive. The maximum performance period you should plan for will be 3 years from the date of the grants award, and we will cover the program timeline pretty soon in a few minutes today as well. You'll hear a term called the Community Home Base. And the approach of the Community Home Base is to set up a central gathering place within an underserved community where the majority of targeted participants of the program will live. And the presenters today will describe this in more detail. Before we turn this over to the team, let's discuss money. So the maximum grant request amount per application is $700,000. So you can request up to $700,000 per community home base, so per application. More than $700,000 may be awarded to one agency/organization. You can submit a separate application for each additional community home base that you and your partners are capable of serving. So for example, let's say you plan to serve 3 rural towns. 3 applications are submitted for the 3 towns at $300,000 per application. In this case, if all 3 grants are awarded, that would total $900,000. That may be possible. However, if one of the 3 grants is awarded, both the state and your organization will be clear on what community will be served through that specific application. Please keep these points in mind today. The presenters will go through this in more detail as we go through the application guide. So in a few minutes, we will show you what tools you'll be working with throughout the application process, and we'll have the application guidelines on the screen for you. At that, let's pass it over to Supervisor Natalie B., and thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. All right, so if some of you joined just a few minutes ago, I will be kind of repeating what I said just as soon as we joined the workshop, so hang in there with me. This webinar is going to be recorded, and it's going to be posted on the OEP's webpage shortly after today's workshop, probably early next week. You'll be able to find a link of the recorded webinar and go back and listen to it as you need. A few of the webinar's features to be aware of is closed captioning, and you'll be able to find that in your toolbar under the 3 little dots that says More. And if you just click on that, you can go down to the settings feature, and then the accessibility. Yeah, so thanks, Nikki. It's settings, accessibility, and then turn on captions. And then also we're going to be using the chat feature heavily today. So this is going to be where you're going to ask your questions throughout the workshop. It looks like a little conversation bubble right there. If you happen to not see that on your toolbar, past participants have been successful of leaving the workshop and then rejoining, and usually the chat feature will pop up on the screen. And as Vic mentioned, we will be going through at the very end, opening up for live question and answers as well. Okay, so now with that, we're going to one more thing about the chat. If you happen to see icons starting to pop up like a thumbs up next to your question, just know that's our way of internally communicating with each other of who's going to be responding to your comment. So with that, I'd like to now review the agenda. All right, so we already went over the introductions, and we're currently within the workshop orientation portion of it. Next, I'll be going over the timeline and competitive chart. And then we're going to switch gears and go into the actual OEP application guide. We'll start off by giving you a program overview, and then going into the application packet and checklist. Within the checklist, there's 9 items that you'll be providing to us for your application package. And the majority of our time today is going to really be going into a deep dive of the project selection criteria. So that's within those application checklist items. We will then be going over the eligible costs and appendices. And then we'll have our closure by Cedric Mitchell, our Deputy Director again. If you have any technical issues throughout the session today, please email ogals, OGALS, @parks.ca and it's also been posted in the chat for you as well. After the webinar, you'll want to reach out to your competitive review project officer. And a little bit later in our session today, we'll show you exactly how to get to your competitive review project officer. But all of our review project officers are divided up for the whole state by county. So you're going to want to reach out to the project officer for that community home base in which your project is going to be serving. Next, let's pull up the timeline. All right, so here's the OEP round 2 timeline. We are currently in the technical assistance workshop phase. Again, this is our second webinar so far, and then we're going to go on the road and do in-person workshops. And we do encourage you to attend those. It's really nice to have that interaction and questions that come up that may not come up during today's webinar. The presentation itself, though, will be the same. I do want to point that out, but we do encourage anyone who would like to attend an in-person workshop, please sign up on the OEP's website. The application due date is December 14th of this year. So applications are due in our online system, and we'll go over that as well, by 5 p.m. on December 14th. Then we take a few months to conduct our reviews, and we anticipate having grant announcements out in summer of 2024. And with that, that means your approximate start date for your program will be likely late summer or fall of 2024. The OEP program can operate for approximately 3 years. So this can be, you can plan to have a multi-year program that you're going to be running. It doesn't need to just be 1 year. It can be multi-year. So up to 3 years is what we have available for this round. And I do want to point out, though, that grantees are to not start their OEP program until after the funds are awarded. Again, we anticipate that to be in late summer. And the department is working on budget clarification right now for the actual end date. So we will be posting more information as soon as we know it on the OEP's website, likely in spring of 2024. But with the information we know right now, again, we do expect your performance period to be up to 3 years from the date of grant award. Okay, so again, we just want to remind you that we do have competitive review project officers that are very happy to help you with any questions that you have after the workshop today. And now we're going to go over to the competitive chart. Now, this competitive chart was put together as a planning tool for you to use in conjunction with the application guide. So it's more of a summary of everything that you want to be aware of to make sure that you're putting forth your best, most competitive application that meets the intent of this program. So this competitive chart, again, is like a summary, but make sure that you're using that application guide. And we do have the application guide page numbers here in the column towards the right. And that correlates to the information we have here under the competitive chart questions. So we do want you to make sure that you use the application guide as your primary source for applying for this grant. But this is always a good chart to also refer to. And it's available on our website as well. Now with that, we are ready to get going into the OEP application guide. So let's take a look there. We will be going page by page through this application guide, and we'll be pointing out key information on each page. And we will also ask if you have any questions for that page or section to please put them into the chat so we can address them for you. We'd like to turn to page 5 and begin looking at the table of contents. This lists 4 sections. We have the program overview section, the application package, eligible costs, and appendices. You'll see that there's 4 color-coded sections which correlate to the top headers throughout the application guide. So you can orientate yourselves as to where you are in the guide by the color-coded ribbons. And I do want to draw your attention to the last sentence on this page. It says all words and terms in small caps are defined in the back of this guide. So that's very important. And we're going to go over just a few of those cap terms in just a second. But anytime you see small capped terms throughout the guide, it does mean that it's defined in the back. Now let's turn to page 6. This is our program overview. As we mentioned a few minutes ago, we do want to remind you that this program is specifically for operation costs for programs, not construction costs or capital projects. We will be going over 3 key terms that you see here, which are community home base, outdoor program, and natural area. We want to review these definitions with you all at the beginning of our session today to get a better feel for this program. Let's go ahead and turn to page 60 and we'll review the definition for community home base. The community home base is a central gathering place for residents of an underserved community where the majority of the targeted participants live. For example, community home base could be a school, a recreation center, community meeting space, or local park that may serve as a central gathering place in the underserved community. On page 62, we can review the definition of outdoor program. So the outdoor programs are experiences that are proposed through one application that promote education, physical activities, leadership, and career pathways that strengthen participants' connection to the natural world. These include activities in the home base, or in the community, I should say, and transporting residents to natural area trips from the community home base. Again, these do not involve construction projects of buildings or land infrastructure. It's for programming and transportation. Some ideas of what you can include in your outdoor program are things such as activities that foster stewardship of the environment, service learning and community outreach activities, and therapeutic recreation, also self-discovery, activities that contribute to healthy lifestyles, and integrating instruction in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math that connects the nature experiences stewardship. So that's in a nutshell of what an outdoor program can entail. And now we'll go over natural area trips. This is also on page 62. The natural area trips are locations outside of your 5-mile radius from the community home base that's challenging to access by residents, such as beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, deserts, tribal land, and state and national parks within California. Zoos, aquariums, natural history museums, and botanical gardens may also be eligible destinations if the primary purpose is for nature education. Okay, so that gave you a good basic feel for the spirit of the program, and we will definitely be diving deeper into each of these as we continue on. We're now going to go over page 6, go back to page 6 and review the eligible applicants. All local, state, and federal agencies are eligible. And examples include school districts and other public education agencies, cities and counties, joint powers authorities, open space authorities, regional open space districts. So basically all public agencies. And then we also have federal and state recognized tribes and nonprofit organizations with 501c3 status are eligible. As I mentioned just a bit ago in the timeline, under the grant performance period, applicants can plan to operate their program for approximately 3 years from the date of grant award. We do want to make sure you are aware that the OEP programming cannot start until after the funds are awarded, which is estimated to be late summer of 2024. And as I mentioned, we will be working on the clarification for the end date, but a safe target date is wrapping up your program by spring of 2027. And we will post updated information on our OEP's website. There is no match requirement for this program, so do want to point that out. It's very exciting. The maximum grant request per application is $700,000, and the minimum is $20,000. Each application will propose a community home base, which Julianne will cover in more detail for us in just a few minutes. The $700,000 cap is per community home base, so per application. You can only apply for one community home base per application. As Cedric mentioned, or I'm sorry, as Victor mentioned earlier, you can submit a separate application for each additional community home base that you and your partners are capable of serving. This does mean that more than $700,000 may be awarded to one agency or organization. I see the chat's been very active, so thank you, and you can continue to put any questions you have for us in the chat feature. And I will now hand it over to Julianne.
Thank you, Natalie. All right, if we could please turn to page 8 and we'll go over the program overview of the community home base and grant selection criteria. This page explains to the applicant that each application will, number one, identify a community home base, which will be a central gathering place like a community center or a school. And 2, plan activities in the community home base and plan trips to natural areas outside of the community home base. For example, activities in the community could include preparing students for a school trip to a state park, or providing educational nature walks along a creek in the community. And trips to natural areas could include transporting the participants from the community home base to natural areas that are challenging to access, such as regional, state, or national parks, beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, or desert areas statewide. Let's go ahead and turn to page 9 to go over the community home base diagram. This page shows the basic approach for this program. The first step there is to identify the community home base in a community for a central gathering place like a recreation center or a school. The second step is to have activities within the community home base, like preparing families for a camping trip. And the third and final step is to organize trips from the community home base to natural areas. Let's turn to page 10 for the application process. The application deadline is by 5 p.m. on December 14th, 2023. The application process section outline identifies important steps to follow as you submit your application. At the bottom of this page is the grant administration process. Applicants who receive a grant must attend a mandatory grant administration workshop before receiving their contracts. This workshop will review the payment process and other administrative processes to ensure successful completion of the program. The grant administration process continues on to page 11. We will also be offering successful applicants outdoor recreation leadership training from the department's Office of Community Involvement. This is voluntary, but again, it is available to successful applicants. Up to 2 people who represent the grantee and will directly engage with the participants may attend the training for free. Graduates of the training will have access to FAM camp supplies. FAM camp includes free use of camping supplies for up to 30 participants, which include tents, sleeping bags, sleeping pads, lanterns, and cooking equipment, as well as free use of campsites in specific state parks. Grantees would only need to bring their own food and participants. Keep in mind that the OEP grant may cover the costs of transportation and food at FAM camp. If you have any questions, go ahead and add those to the chat feature, and I will now hand it over to Kyle.
Thank you, Julianne. Let's go ahead and we'll turn to page 12 for the application package. The next pages we will cover contains information and guidance on completing the application. Please submit only the items requested in the checklist. Do not submit supplementary materials such as letters of support. Also, we're going to be going over some forms. Those forms are fillable versions that are available on our webpage as well. So next, we're going to turn to page 13 for the application checklist. Cool. Applicants will use the checklist on page 13 to organize the application, which provides documents that will be needed to be uploaded into the online application portal submittable. These checklist items, it also identifies which items require the authorized representative's signature in that right column. Now, if we could turn to page 14. This page provides instructions on filling out the application form. Page 15, please. And this is the actual application form that will be used for this program. It provides boxes to include the program name, community home base name and location, applicant contact information, and this form must be signed by the authorized representative. Next, let's turn to page 16 for the grant selection criteria. Perfect. So this page includes an overview of the grant selection criteria. Checklist item number 2. This criteria will be used to rank all statewide applications. There are 8 criteria for this program that add up to a maximum of 100 points. Notice the bullets. All applicants start with 0 points. No one loses points. Points are gained. To guide the applicants, each criteria has a scoring chart or a scoring rubric. Also, technical assistance is available for each separate criteria in the back of the guide. We will be reviewing each criteria and its corresponding technical assistance during the workshop. If you have any questions, put those in the chat feature. Otherwise, we're going to move on to page 17 for grant selection criteria. Number 1, community home base. Thank you, Nikki. So criteria number 1 focuses on the community home base. This page is broken into 2 parts. Part A's scoring points are based off the numbers provided by the community fact finder in the categories of income, poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learner levels around the community home base. Part B asks applicants to describe challenges affecting the residents. It also asks specifically why the community home base was selected and what is the need for its residents to have access to an outdoor program. Here's a chance to include information beyond Part A. So if we kind of scroll down here, we'll take a look at these scoring rubrics. We'll get down to the bottom and we'll continue on to page 18. And as you can see, The scoring rubrics show the rankings will be based on all statewide applications for the categories of median household income, people in poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learners. In addition, at the bottom of page 18, say points for Part B, applicants can gain up to 5 points for describing challenges beyond those described in Part A. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the Community Fact Finder to find specific information within a half-mile radius of the community home base. As you can see on the screen here, for criteria 1, you're going to click on this parksforcalifornia.org. And here you'll see in the middle of the page, there's an area where for you to enter an address. We're going to use the example of the Dickey Youth Community Center in Fresno. The address there, 1515 East Divisadero Street in Fresno, California. Once you have entered that address, you're going to hit the search button. It's going to drop a blue pen at the location that you have indicated. The numbers that we will be asking for in the application are on the left-hand side in this blue box. And we're looking for, again, the median household income, people below poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learners. These last two categories, free or reduced price meals and English learners, come from the nearest public elementary, middle, and high school to your community home base. So another feature is that in this bottom area, there's a tab here or a box you can click for schools. Now, if you click that, all the schools will show up as these yellow blocks on the map. You can also move the pen around to find the best numbers for your community home base. Now, the pen does need to be located within the community home base. So once you have moved it within the property of the community home base, if you think you've got the best numbers, you can click the Get Report button that Nikki is now circling. So once you click that button, a report will be generated. It'll just take just a couple seconds here. And then we'll take a look at what that looks like. And this is what the Community Fact Finder report looks like. There is a project ID in the upper right that'll be entered into the application. And also for criteria 1, the data that we're pulling off of this is the median household income, the people below poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learners for the response to Part A. So only submit one Community Fact Finder report for each proposed community home base. Remember, only one community home base per application is allowed. Let's now turn to the technical assistance on page 49 of the application guide. Great. The community home base should be strategically located within walking distance for the majority of residents and should meet the intent of this funding opportunity. We also invite you to review the definition for challenges and use it as a guide to tell the community's story. Go ahead and put any questions into the chat feature, and I'm going to hand it over to Adela.
Thank you, Kyle. Please turn to page 19 to view grant selection criteria number 2, community planning. Here, you'll describe how the community's feedback was obtained through outreach and to provide the ideas that the community had for outdoor programs, including activities at or near the community home base, and activities at the natural area destination that will be implemented. At Part A, you'll describe at least 2 meetings that were conducted in person at the community home base or within a half mile of the community home base. At Part B, you'll describe the topics presented at the meetings and all ideas from residents that will be included for the activities in the community. And at Part C, you'll describe the topics presented at the meetings and all ideas from residents that will be included for the natural area trips. Next, let's move to page 20. Here, you'll see that in order to score the maximum points, an applicant will conduct at least 2 meetings in person at or near the community home base involving at least 10 youth and 10 adults in total through the combined meetings. Also, points will be given for listing the accepted ideas for the activities in the community and natural area trips. Technical assistance can be found on page 50. This page provides ideas for in-person meetings. Please put any questions in the chat feature. And now here is Christine.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Adela. All right, so now we're going to turn to page 21. Perfect. Thanks, Nikki. And this is grant selection criteria number 3, which is activities in the community. Criteria 3 asks applicants to describe the proposed activities in the community within the 5-mile radius of the community home base. This criteria is designed to capture what activities will take place within the community for the outdoor program. So there, for parts A, applicants number 1 through 3, applicants will provide the activities title and location. Remember, these activities must be within a 5-mile radius of the community home base. For numbers 4 through 7, applicants will describe whether the activity in the community is for learning about the community's environment or preparing for a natural area trip. The applicant is to provide a summary of planned activities, which will include the educational goals and age groups that will be participating. So underneath that, for parts B and C, applicants will also be asked to provide the total number of activity days and the total number of youth participants served. So at the bottom of the page there, you'll see the scoring rubric reflects points that can be earned by answering if at least one of the activities in the community will include learning about the community's environment, preparing participants for natural area trips, and will include a multi-generational residence, including families and older adults. On the next page, page 22, responses to the parts A and C will also be ranked against other statewide applications with similar grant requests. As you can see, looking at these 3 scoring rubrics, applications will be ranked on the proposed activities in the community, the number of activity days, and the number of youth participants. So, what do we mean by similar grant requests? The definition of similar grant requests can be found starting on page 63. So let's turn to 63, perfect. And at the bottom there, you'll see the definition. And so this is here so that those applications with smaller grant requests will compete with each other only, and those with larger requests will compete with each other only. So if you scroll on down, there you go, perfect. So you can see the break of the grant request amounts. So let's turn to page 52 now. And this is the Criteria 3's technical assistance page, which provides more information on the criteria's 2 goals, which are preparing participants for natural area trips and learning about the community's environment. It is important to mention again that to be eligible as an activity in the community, it must involve outdoor or indoor education components within that 5-mile radius of the community home base. So with that, please put any questions in the chat feature about criteria number 3. So now we're going to move on to criteria number 4. And so this starts on page 23. Perfect. So here we have the criteria number 4, which are those natural area trips. Criteria 4 asks applicants to describe the outdoor program's proposed natural area trips to locations outside of a 5-mile radius from the community home base that is challenging for residents to access. So for part A, numbers 1 and 2, applicants will describe the natural area trip destination, the location, and if the destination will be visited more than once. For number 3, applicants will describe if the trip will be day trips or overnight trips. These can be an all-day trip or overnight trips. There is no preference. However, for 2 additional points, at least one day or overnight trip should be to a destination of the state park system. For numbers 4 through 7, in the description of the natural area trips, applicants are requested to include a summary of planned activities, which include a self-discovery goal. And again, self-discovery is that unstructured time in nature, an educational goal, and the age groups that will be participating. So underneath that, for parts B and C, applicants will be asked to provide the total number of natural area trips and the total number of youth participants served. At the bottom of this page, the scoring rubric reflects points that can be earned by answering if at least one of those natural area trips will be to a state park system and involve both self-discovery and educational experiences. And lastly, include multi-generational residents, including families and older adults. So on the next page, page 24, responses for parts A and C will also be ranked against other statewide applications with similar grant requests. So there's that term again, similar grant requests. If you remember from the last criteria, it is designed so that applicants with smaller grant amounts will compete with each other, and those with larger grant requests will compete with each other only. As you can see, looking at these 3 scoring rubrics, applications will be ranked on the range of natural area trips, the number of natural area trips, and the number of youth participants. So now let's turn to page 53 to take a look at the start of Criteria 4's technical assistance, which provides examples of eligible activities and education topics for natural area trips. So you can see the examples there, and some include, you can see there, camping skills, wildlife viewing, coastal protection, just to name a few. On the following page, page 54, the technical assistance continues, and it provides information regarding the priority for at least one of the natural area trips to occur at a state park, and how the 5-mile radius is defined under natural area trips. And so that 5-mile radius is the straight line distance from the community home base and not driving routes. Applicants may use online tools that provide a straight line distance between the 2 locations. So again, just to recap, criteria 3, which is the activities in the community, are for activities within a 5-mile radius of that community home base. And then for criteria 4, it's for natural area trips outside of that 5-mile radius of the community home base. So with that, please put any questions you have about criteria 4 in the chat feature. I will now hand it over to Julianne.
Thank you, Christine. Let's please turn to page 25 for grant selection criteria number 5, participant recruitment plan. This criteria question asks for a strategy for inviting, recruiting, and encouraging residents with an emphasis on youth that live within the half-mile of the community home base to participate in the outdoor program. Applicants will be able to select from at least 3 of the 10 methods that are listed on the technical assistance page 55. And from these, you'll explain why those methods will be effective. Some of these methods can include collaborating with local schools, conducting door-to-door in-person invitations, and mailing flyers to residents within the half-mile radius. Let's go to page 26 to discuss grant selection criteria number 6, internships. Internships for this criteria are ones that can be used for future employment resumes or college admissions for natural resources, environmental justice, or outdoor recreation professions. The scoring rubric down below shows that the maximum points will be given for 3 interns at 200 hours each. The internships need to be directly related to the outdoor program. The technical assistance can be found on page 56. The technical assistance provides a list of 7 types of eligible internship services. These internships can be paid or unpaid. If the internship is paid, this is an eligible grant expense. Please add any questions you may have to the chat feature. And I will now hand it over to Esme.
Great, thanks, Julianne. All right, Nikki, if you can take us to page 27, please. Awesome, thank you. So we're going to review criteria, the grant selection criteria number 7, partnerships and capacity building. So criteria number 7 focuses on partnerships with the applicant to help achieve any of the goals outlined on grant selection criteria number 3, which is the activities in the community, grant selection criteria number 4, which is the natural area trips, or the grant selection criteria number 6, internships. The scoring rubric on this page shows maximum points will be given to applicants with 3 or more partnerships. So now let's please turn to page 57. Great, thank you, Nikki. And we're going to review the technical assistance for criteria number 7. So let's go ahead and go over a few of the partnership examples. So let's take a look at partnership example number 1. Capacity building, such as teaching the applicant or another partner a service skill, cultural awareness training, administrative assistance, mentoring, or etc. Partnership example number 5, a group that specializes in serving a specific age or cultural group, foster youth, or language translation interpretation. And I just want to add to your attention to partnership example number 8. There's no point advantage for greater amounts of committed funds or cash. So let's scroll a little bit below page 57, please. Great, thank you. Now let's go over a few examples that will not receive credit as partnerships. Number 1, entrance to destinations. Any entry charging a standard non-discounted entrance admission fee that the public would pay for is not considered a partnership. Number 3, paying vendors. Paying for profit vendors full price for services such as transportation, charter, rentals, lessons, activities, etc., are also not considered a partnership. All right, now if you could, Nikki, please take us to page 28. Thank you. We're going to review the grant selection criteria number 8, mentoring youth leaders after the grant performance period. So for this criteria, applicants will provide a plan for mentoring youth after the grant funds expire. Sustaining the outdoor program beyond the grant performance period is not required. However, it is about engaging youth after the outdoor program grant has ended. So within the plan, applicants will describe how many youth will be selected as having potential to become future environmental leaders in California, as well as the type of activities the mentoring will involve and the approximate time period. Or if it's not possible to mentor youth after the grant performance period, please explain why for us. Now let's turn to page 58. Nikki, please. Thank you. And now we're going to go over the technical assistance for criteria number 8. So for example, there's an example here. An annual community needs assessment about environmental justice may be conducted and reported by youth. All right, so this concludes the grant selection portion of the Outdoor Equity Program application guide. If any questions arise, please go ahead and add that to the chat feature. I will hand it over to Adela now.
Thank you, Esme. Let's turn to page 29 to view the Community Fact Finder report and certification directions. This page summarizes the steps we discussed a little earlier regarding the Community Fact Finder. Remember, only one Community Fact Finder report for your community home base may be included with each application. Now let's move to page 30 to view the Community Fact Finder certification form. This form is signed by the authorizing representative, and it certifies that you placed your PIN on or inside the boundary of your community home base for your report. Please put any questions in the chat feature. Next, let's turn to page 31 to view the authorizing resolution information and directions. The authorizing resolution shows that your governing body approves the application. Please note, in the format section, highlighted here, the language provided in the resolution must remain unchanged. Now let's move to page 32 to view the authorizing resolution template. Please note there is a fillable template on the OEP webpage too. Please put any questions in the chat feature. And now here is Christine.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Adela. And we're actually at the 10 o'clock hour here. And so we're going to be taking a break before we get into the grant scope cost estimate form. So if you guys want to get a stretch in and take a break for a little bit, and then we'll dive into that grant scope cost estimate form. So we'll be back in 10 minutes at 10:10.
been muted. You don't need to talk.
Okay, everyone, welcome back from break. Great questions so far in the chat feature. So I'm just going to give a brief recap here of a few things. We got quite a bit of questions about what would be an eligible partnership versus an ineligible partnership. And so what we have on your screen right now is the technical assistance section for criteria number 7, partnerships and capacity building. So I just want to emphasize that, these guidelines, for your transparency and understanding have quite a bit of detail and examples. And so after the workshop and over the next month or so, as you're considering your program, use these guidelines to help give you additional clarity and ideas, et cetera. So on your screen, you'll see 8 eligible examples of partnerships to achieve one or more of the goals related to grant selection criteria 3, which is activities in the community, 4, which is natural area trips, and criteria 6, which is internships. So there's 7 eligible examples there. Now, if you go to the bottom of this page 57, you'll see 3 rules that we have of what will not be considered a partnership. And these are based on some examples we actually saw in round 1, which, were considered questionable, that our team, came together, and after reviewing about 400 applications, of course, our team of project officers were able to provide some great insight about some of the more questionable examples they've seen in round 1. So the first that's not eligible as partnership is just an entrance to a destination. Like, let's just say you're going to a Pacific State Park and you're paying the standard entrance admission fee that the public would pay. That is not considered a partnership with state parks, for example, or national parks. The second example, let's just say we're using an example of a national park. If you go into national park and somebody that works for national parks will provide a tour, and it's the normal operation that park would provide for any group or any member of the public, that also is not considered a partnership. It has to be beyond routine programming that's already available to the public at the destination. So what are they going to do for you that is beyond their normal operation? Okay, and then for item number 3, paying vendors, paying a for-profit vendor the full price for a service, such as a transportation. Like, let's just use a great example. You're going to take a group of family members for a 300-mile trip to the Redwood Forest from a community, and you're hiring a charter bus service, and they're going to charge you their normal rate. That is not a partnership. Now, if that charter service will provide a discount that's not available to the general public, or even do it for free for their own advertisement purposes, then that would qualify as a partnership. So, be clear in your response to criteria number 7. If you have a situation that could be interpreted as 1 through 3 in the bottom, be clear about why that example is beyond what the destination operator would normally provide for the general public. So it has to be, again, discounted fees, discounted admission, services that are beyond what they normally do for their normal operation, or fees that are discounted that's not available for the general public. So those are examples of qualifying partnerships. So great questions. Also, let's go a bit higher. We had a question about internships, and I want to go to criteria number 6, Nikki, if you don't mind. And I just want to give you all an example of the detail that's in the scoring rubrics. So here we have an example of a criteria where we received a question in the chat of, can we provide more internships than just for 3 people? And the scoring rubrics here are intended for 2 reasons. Number one is, of course, to give you transparency of what the state is looking for. So pay close attention to the scoring rubrics here. Nikki highlighted at least 3 residents. So the details at least. It doesn't mean that you're limited to 3 internships, but you can do more. But to meet the 8-point example here, you'd have to have at least 3 internships where each intern will receive 200 hours of experience. Okay, so that's an example of detail. Now, another piece of advice that I'll give you is for this criteria, we do like to say this is within your control. The grants can support internships. And in this example, we would recommend that you do plan to reach the goal of scoring those 8 points. If this program is going to be like round 1, it is our advice to try to score the maximum points for things within your control. So if you're not thinking about internships right now and you don't plan to do an internship, then your application would start off at 0 points for this criteria instead of 2, 5, or 8 points. So again, our advice is, as much as possible, try to plan to score the maximum points for each criteria within your control. Okay. All right. At that, team, go ahead and we'll get back to the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. So now we're going, as Victor said, to go jump back into the guidelines here, or actually a checklist item. So we're now going to turn to page 33, which is the grant scope cost estimate form and the grant scope cost estimate certification. So on this page 33, it includes instructions on how to establish the grant scope and provide a cost estimate for the outdoor program. Kyle will be going over the application guide's eligible cost section later within this workshop, and will provide examples of what costs can be included within the grant scope cost estimate form. On the form, applicants will list only the activities that will be funded by the grant, plus any committed funds, if applicable, during the grant performance period. These lump sum estimated costs of the activities must be consistent with the responses to grant selection criterias 3 and 4. So please do not include any future costs. It is important to note that the total program cost must cover all of the activities in the community and the natural area trips described in grant selection criteria 3 and 4. Up to 5% contingency for costs can be folded into the line items. Do not list contingency as a separate line item. Also, please check the math and dollar amounts between all forms in the application to ensure the grant request amount and total program cost are consistent. All dollar amounts must be rounded to the nearest dollar. We do understand that actual costs may change during the outdoor program. In most cases, a revised grant scope cost estimate form is not required when estimated costs fluctuate during the outdoor program. Okay, so now that we've gone over the instructions regarding the form, we will now turn to the next page, page 34. Perfect. So here you'll see the form where you will be listing the activities in the community, both the title and then those total costs on the right-hand side. Also below that are the natural area trips that you'll be listing, those trip destinations and the total costs for them on the right-hand side. And then towards the bottom of the form, you will be listing the total costs of both activities in the community and natural area trips. Also, any costs of internships and costs of liability insurance premiums. And last but not least, the total program costs and requested grant amount. So one thing to note, that this grant scope cost estimate form will be available as a fillable template on the OEP webpage soon. The fillable template will look similar to this form. However, it has been expanded so that the first page of the form will be dedicated to listing all the activities in the community, and the second page will be dedicated to listing all natural area trips. And then the third page will be dedicated to listing the total program costs of both activities, which is what Nikki's circling there. Okay. And then last but not least, please put those questions in the chat feature. So turn to the next page, page 35. And this page is the grant scope cost estimate certification. This certification encourages applicants to be aware of the eligible cost rules when developing their grant scope cost estimate form. The grant scope cost estimate certification is available as the last page of that fillable form that I had just discussed about the grant scope cost estimate form template. Again, this will be located on the OEP webpage. So please put any questions in the chat feature about this certification. So now we're going to turn to page 36. And this is the funding sources form instructions. So these instructions are how to list the outdoor program's funding sources and any participant fees or loan sources, if applicable, on the funding sources form. If the grant itself will fund the total program cost, then the top right and bottom right boxes on the form will show the requested grant amount only. If the outdoor program will have any other funding sources in addition to the grant request, then you must identify each funding source by name, source, amount, and committed date on the form. Again, check the math and dollar amounts between all forms in the application to ensure the grant request amount and total program costs are consistent. Now, if the outdoor program will have participant fees, you will please list the total estimated amount that will be charged on the form. These are fees charged to participants for costs beyond, that's the key word there, beyond what the grant will pay for. If any part of the outdoor program will involve fees charged to participants, the amount charged should be reasonable, as the applicant will need to consider participants affected by poverty. If a funding source is a loan, the applicant must identify the type of loan and shall not use any grant funds for the purpose of making any leverage loan, pledge, promissory note, or similar financial device or transaction without prior written approval of our office. Lastly, if the funding sources change during the grant performance period, a revised form is required within 30 days. So now let's turn to the next page, page 37, and here you'll see the actual form. So you'll see there at the top of the form, you will put your grant request in, and that will be on the right-hand side there in the amount. And then again, if there's any fees that you'll be charging to participants beyond the grant, you'll be listing it there as well. And then of course, you'll be adding that up and putting the total at the bottom of the form. And this form is also available on our webpage as a fillable template. So once again, please put any questions in the chat feature. I will now turn it over to Esme.
Great, thanks, Christine. All right, Nikki, if you can take us to page 38, please. Awesome, thank you. We're going to review the checklist item number 7, applicant capacity. So under this checklist, here applicants will answer 5 questions regarding their capacity to achieve the outdoor program during the grant performance period and their implementation plan for sustaining a successful program. Applicants will respond to the following areas to establish capacity. Number 1, previous experience with outdoor programs. Number 2, clarity that the applicant will oversee administration if the grant is awarded. Number 3, previous grant funding received. Number 4, previous or ongoing relationships with the residents or stakeholders near the community home base. Number 5, whether or not permits are required and what the plan is to obtain them. The applicant will answer letters A through C listed below, which include A, where the applicant describes that the landowners of the locations listed in the response to grant selection criteria number 4 have been contacted and determined if a permit is required. B, if the landlord stated a permit is required, the applicant will provide a copy of the permit or agreement or a plan and timeline to secure the permit or the agreement. And lastly, if a permit or agreement is not needed, then the applicant will describe the steps taken to verify that no permit or agreement with any of the properties will be required. If you have any questions in regards to this criteria, please go ahead and add that to the chat feature. We're going to move on to page 39. Thank you, Nikki. We're going to go over checklist item number 8, reporting certification. So here, applicants will need to keep clear records for the reporting requirements stated under Assembly Bill 209. In order to meet those requirements, grantees will submit annually the 5 listed reporting requirements shown here to the Office of Grants and Local Services through an online reporting system and before the final grant payment is approved. Okay. Any questions here? Please go ahead and add that to the chat feature. Now let's turn to page 40. Great, thanks, Nikki. And we're going to go over checklist item number 9. These are for nonprofit requirements. So this page asks applicants who are nonprofits to provide information regarding their IRS status, the most recent filed federal 990 forms, and other state required reporting requirements from the Attorney General's Office and the California Franchise Tax Board. I want to direct your attention to the 4 bullets listed on the bottom of page 40, such as articles of incorporation, mission statements, etc. The items listed here can be requested at any time during the review process from our office. Okay. If you have any questions, please go ahead and add it to the chat feature. Now I'm going to hand it over to Kyle.
Thank you.
Jump in real quick here. Thanks,
Yeah.
Esme. Nikki, can you, in the chat feature, I just posted a link to the round 1 grant programs that were awarded. And if you can take the group there, I want to point out something that Esmeralda just covered. Okay, so Esmeralda covered reporting requirements, and if you can scroll a bit lower, Nikki, what we have here on this link is a list of all of the 125 awarded round 1 grants. And we received a couple of really good questions that I'd like to kind of cover that pertains to this. One is there a range of nature area trips that should be proposed in order to be competitive? And the first part of my answer to Angie's question was that in both round one, and we anticipate the same in round two, the amount requested often is a factor, right? So obviously, if you're proposing a $40,000 grant, it's more likely that you're going to do less trips throughout the state than a $700,000 grant request. So what we did for round two is we actually revised criteria number 3 and number 4 so that we'll be able to place each application within a grant request range. And there's a definition in the back of the guidelines that I posted in the chat feature that is a term called similar grant request. And I want to emphasize, as you use these guidelines, when you see words in cap letters like similar grant request, you'll see that term in both criteria number 3 and criteria number 4. That means that term is defined in the back of the guidelines. So again, it's another example of clarification and detail we have in these guidelines for you. Not only do we have scoring rubrics to give you additional information about how to be competitive and what the state is looking for, there's also the technical assistance section for the criteria and even the definition section. So this is an example of how we further clarify terms through the definition section in the back of the guide. So so don't worry if you're planning on going for a smaller grant of, let's say, a range A, which is $20,000 to $99,000. You're not going to have to compete with another organization that's going for $700,000. Only applications that request $600,000 to $700,000 will be evaluated against themselves for criteria number 3 and number 4, because again, it's more likely that the more you request in funding, the more trips you're going to be able to do, for example. Okay, so now Esmeralda mentioned reporting. Something else that's really exciting about this program is, Nikki, if you go back to, why don't you go ahead and select Nature for All? That's the fourth box on the right side there, and scroll down because I want you all to be able to see what's here. So we list the program goals from the criteria from the criteria from round 1. And if you keep on going lower here, Nikki, at the very bottom, you'll see a placeholder where we say that annual reports start in December of this year. Our OGAL's grant admin team is currently, working with the grantees, and grantees will submit what's been accomplished so far through December 2023, and the accomplishments will actually be posted on this website too, on each program page here. So we'll be able to add the number of children served, partnership accomplishments and lessons learned, how educational goals were achieved, unforeseen challenges and recommended solutions, with the goal of inspiring and building capacity for future outdoor program providers throughout California. So the exciting thing about this program and through this website is it's our hope that as our round 1 grantees go through the experience of taking community members to nature area trips and having activities in the community, that not only are they going to highlight videos and photos and testimonials from the participants about how this program may have changed their life, but also there's going to be some tips and lessons learned provided by the experience of round 1 grantees that can help build capacity for future outdoor providers statewide, for future providers. So if you are awarded a grant in this round 2, we're going to look to you to help share your experience and your insight with future organizations as you go through the next couple of years of providing these types of programs. So that's a quick summary of what Esmeralda covered in terms of the the purpose of the reporting requirements if you become a grantee. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Victor. We're going to go ahead and turn to page 41, Nikki, for the eligible and ineligible costs. Perfect. So pages 41 through 44 provide rules and examples of eligible costs for the program. Planning costs dating back to the date of appropriation are eligible if the grant is awarded. Remember that the OEP program cannot start until after funds are awarded. We're estimating that to be summer of 2024. The eligible costs for activities in the community and natural area trips are split into 4 categories. We have category A, supplies, equipment, and fees admissions. Category B is travel costs. Category C is labor costs. And category D is insurance for all activities necessary for the outdoor program. We're going to start on page 42 for part A, supplies, equipment, activity fees, admissions. And I want to draw your attention to most economical use of state funds near the bottom of the page. So there we go. Perfect. So most economical use of state funds for supplies and equipment that will cost over $500 per single unit item and or $10,000 per purchase transaction, and which can be purchased, leased, or rented. The most economical use of state funds must be applied. This means that the grantee will use the most affordable option to complete the outdoor program during the grant performance period by either renting, leasing, or purchasing the supplies and equipment. An example is a grantee who is taking 10 participants surfing for 3 trips. It may be more economical use of state funds to rent 10 surfboards each time rather than buying 10 surfboards. Next, we'll move on to category B, travel costs. This starts on page 42. It continues through page 44. And I want to draw your attention to page 43, right here in the middle of the page. We're going to be talking about the daily meal budget per participant for natural area trips, which those are trips that are outside of that 5-mile radius from the community home base. An average of $20 per meal, which includes drinks and snacks, is allowed. If 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner are necessary per day, the total maximum per participant is $60 per day. Applicants can use the formula below to plan costs for their trips accordingly. Next, we're going to turn to page 44 for part C, labor costs. It starts in the middle of the page. And I want to draw your attention to, to the second bullet for internships. So internships consistent with grant selection criteria number 6. Internships will be administered as employee services of the grantee. The grantee must follow applicable laws for employee services, including internships. Contact California's Division of Labor Standards and Enforcement for internship rules. And next, we're going to move on to page 45 for part D. This is insurance for all activities. And we're going to be talking about this first bullet here. Premiums on liability insurance, including aggregate coverage for all activities necessary for the outdoor program, are eligible. There is an insurance policy checklist that lists the insurance policy requirements for grantees on our website at parks.ca.gov/OEP, and that's going to be located under the Grant Administration tab. Go ahead and put any questions you might have in the chat feature. And now we're going to look at ineligible costs for the program, which starts on page 46. So ineligible costs include outside of the grant performance period, indirect costs, capital projects, vehicle acquisition for ownership, class 3 e-bikes, which can exceed 20 miles per hour, routine park maintenance, fundraising, food for activities in the community, travel outside of the state of California, gifting of equipment, gifting of passes, gifting of awards, trophies, plaques, ribbons, medals, and prizes, gifting of money such as promotional gift cards to recruit or reward participants for non-eligible costs. And we'll go to the next page. There's 2 left on the next page. Grant writing and program imposed on the applicant through legal mitigation. Those are ineligible. Go ahead and put any questions you might have in the chat feature. And we're going to move on to page 48. technical assistance for applicants. This page is the first page in our appendices and begins technical assistance for this program. Applicants have access to technical assistance provided by the competitive review project officers until the application due date. To get to the list of competitive review project officers for your community home base, click on the link for park.ca.gov/OEP. Then on the right-hand side, click on Project Officers by County. The counties are listed in the left column and the corresponding competitive review project officers are listed in the middle green column. So if this is a competitive application, if you want to reach a project officer, make sure you're calling or emailing the competitive project officer for your county. Now we can turn back to page 48. Yeah. Perfect. So project officers can provide feedback on checklist items except for project selection criteria, which is checklist item number 2. If there are still incomplete items after the application deadline, project officers will work with applicants to determine timelines for those items. Remember, we are here to help along every step of the process. One more thing that I'd like to point out is technical assistance pages. As a reminder, this is the additional guidance for the criteria section with ideas for applicants which provide more in-depth technical assistance for each criteria. This concludes the OEP application guide portion of the application workshop. Please put any questions into the chat feature, and I'm going to now hand it over to Victor.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Kyle. So let me go over a few I'm seeing a few patterns of questions here throughout this morning about ongoing programs and how to handle that. Is it eligible? Is it competitive, et cetera? And that could be either an ongoing program that you've established outside of the outdoor equity program, meaning you have not received a round 1 grant, or you've received a round 1 grant and you seek to continue the program. Nikki, can you please go back to criteria number 1B on page 17? And highlight the part about where residents currently lack access. Okay. So in the response to criteria number 1B, if you have an existing program at the same community home base, and that's the key, the same community home base, and you are looking to continue operating there, the key is to explain how the residents currently lack access to the proposed round 2 outdoor equity program. And this can be achieved by either explaining that you'll offer new activities in the community or new destinations through natural area trips that are proposed for round 2 that are currently not available to the residents in the area that you are proposing to serve through the round 2 grant. The second option, it could be a combination, but the second option is to explain how the round 2 proposed program, so this application, will include participants that are not currently being served through your current programming. Now I have seen a few questions of scenarios where in the chat, a few folks mentioned that if funding is not made available, then the program will have to stop operating in that community, and that's also a factor that you should explain in your response to criteria number 1B, and that can be taken into consideration. So again, this program is really about creating new access and new opportunities for people that don't have access right now, that don't have access to experience. So if you're trying to continue operating a program, we'll have to take a really close look at why is this grant needed, and how will this ensure that people who currently lack access will now receive access to the outdoors. So keep that in mind, please, for criteria number 1B. Okay. And then also we will, after our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell, covers some final thoughts for you, we will open it up for your questions. And you can unmute yourself, raise your hand, and we'll call on you. And we'll be here to help you throughout. We'll stay as long as you have questions until 12:30. So we're doing well with time right now. I want to do a quick recap. Nikki, if you can go back to the main Outdoor Equity Program webpage, and I'll do a quick recap of the tools available for you. And for those that currently have some questions in chat, I'll get to those once Cedric starts giving his final thoughts. We'll get back to the chat in a few minutes, and I may answer some of those questions on the mic as well. So here we are on the main program website. Team, if you could please post, Nikki, go ahead and post this page link real quick in the chat, so everyone again has a link to the page, the main page here. And your main source of information will be in that application process tab that is below the photograph. Now, if you're interested in grant payments and you want to see the grant contract provisions, your resource will be the Grants Administration Guide. So that is post-award. If your grant is selected for funding, again, sometime in summer 2024, then your grant will be transferred into your application will be transferred into the grant administration phase. So if you could click on the application process, Nikki, please. And let's go to the, we'll give you a quick tour of the online submittable system. Kyle or Nikki, if you could be prepared to, cover that. Thank you, Nikki. So this is where you'll prepare your application online. We do understand that there was a technical issue in round 1, which has been resolved. And I'll explain it for you for those that applied in round 1. We actually added an Excel spreadsheet into some of the text boxes, and did not realize that when somebody copies and pastes text into an Excel spreadsheet, if there was a return entered in the Word document, once it's transferred to Excel, it jumps cells. And so that created some problems. So that issue has been resolved. There are no longer Excel cells that are, in the text boxes. So that will, we expect your round 2 application to go far more smoothly in this system. However, I also like to say, get familiar with the system online early. Don't wait until December 14th to start entering your application online. You can apply before December 14th, and that's certainly welcome. We advise you to start, preparing your application and drafting it online as early as you can, so you start getting familiar with the system. As we're showing, the each text box which has a red asterisk is required information, and the order of the checklist items match the application guide. And you'll see that each section provides some tips to help orientate you of where to get more information. It connects you back to the application guide where you can get more information in case you have questions. So this does connect back to the application guide. Okay. Okay, so definitely, create an account for your application and start playing around with this. And as Kyle and the team mentioned, we'll be here to help you if you have any questions. Okay, so Nikki, if you can go back to the main program page, application process section, and let's bring up the program timeline. All right, so where are we? We are in the summer fall 2023 technical assistance workshop phase. As we've mentioned, we'll also be doing in-person workshops statewide starting next week. And So, you're welcome to attend those, and we'll also bring some copies of application guides for you. The application deadline is December 14th. So from now through December 14th, technical assistance is ongoing. We're here to help you throughout the application process. It's not just about application workshops. You have access to our application review project officers. So they'll be here to help you. And so if you have a question throughout the process, please go ahead and contact your competitive pre-award application contact, and we'll show you where that information is available on our website next. We anticipate grant award announcements to take place by summer of 2024, which means that your program start date, it may be early summer, so which means your program start date planning should be no earlier than late summer or fall of 2024. And in the bottom section, these can be multi-year grants. So you can plan to operate your program with the grant funding through, we'd say, roughly spring of 2024. We're currently working, our department is working on budget clarification for the end date, but it is safe to currently understand that the performance period will be 3 years from the summer 2024 grant award. So plan for up to spring 2027 completion of your proposed program. Okay. Now, Nikki, if you go back to the application, let's look at the, please click the next tab, competitive chart. All right, so this chart is really a two-page, a brief summary of the details of the application guide. It's your cheat sheet. It's not a requirement to submit this. You don't have to use it. We encourage you to use it. On the right-hand side, you have a yes/no thing. So kind of use this as your own internal checklist to make sure you're on target to be competitive. There's page references for the application guide where more information is available. So if you look at, let's just say, item number 6, natural area trips, you'll see there's a really brief kind of high-level summary of the intent of that criteria. So if you use this as your general planning guide, it's going to get you a quick snapshot of what this program looks for at a higher level. But of course, you want to read the application guide in great detail. Again, the scoring rubrics, the definition section in the back of the guide, and the technical assistance section in the back of the guide provides a lot of information, guidance, ideas for you that will help you be really clear on how to be competitive for this program. Okay. At that, we look forward to your applications. We look forward to answering your questions throughout. Cedric Mitchell will provide some remarks, and then we'll stay and answer your questions live. So thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And just to add to the conversation about reapplying, one of the things to consider about this program and what hopefully will make it unique in the country is that what we're trying to do is create empowerment for communities so that they, at some point in time, they should be able to access nature, whether it's close to home or far off experiences on their own without having to go through an agency or through government in order to have that access. Part of the problem that is outlined right now is that there just isn't that access available for one reason or another, some of it perceived and some of it barriers. Hopefully at the end of all of these programs that are going forward and the efforts that we're all collectively making, the barriers will be reduced and communities will have the ability to access those close to home experiences or those far off experiences. If you're going to reapply, we welcome that. But I encourage you to think about the richness of your program, the depth that you are trying to reach within the community. If you're expanding to additional community, those kinds of things are important to us. What we really need to see, because the money is not indefinite. If at the end, we don't have empowerment for the people who are who we're serving, then ultimately the money stops and we end up walking away. I believe that's a disservice to people. So what we need to do and what we are looking for and what we want to help you with is helping those communities to be empowered to move forward. There is, as I mentioned earlier, I've had the unique and wonderful experience of working with our outdoor equity program recipients in the outdoor recreation leadership program. The reason I'm bringing that back up is because it is free to those who will receive grants with us. But the program is not just about teaching how to camp. Certainly that is a part of it. But what we're talking about is techniques we use to keep people engaged. It's about giving that organic experience and how you inject that into the programs that we're doing. It's also about communication skill development and team building and overcoming fears. It's about empowerment. And so we encourage people, those who do attend, the feedback that we get consistently is that it's not all what they expected, that they would just be learning how to set up tents, but instead they learn techniques that will enhance their own programming and own professional lives. I encourage you to take a look at it regardless of whether or not you have gotten a grant or will get a grant. There's a small fee and it's on our website, but having access to the FamCamp program and the equipment, which can be as high as $16,000 worth of equipment and trailer and campsites. And once you're certified, be able to access those facilities for up to 2 years at no charge. We really want to do here at Safe Parks anything that we can to help you put your best foot forward. Please take advantage of the additional trainings that we'll be doing, the additional workshops that we'll be doing. Please take advantage of calling project officers and bouncing your ideas off of them. I encourage you to, if you want to utilize email us and text, please do. We're here to help you in any way that we can. One of the things I wanted to mention is that the uniqueness of this particular program is that it is a program that revolves around the idea of paying for staffing and paying for the equipment we need in order to break down those barriers and get things done. Most of the programs, as we know in the past, have been capital based, but this unique experience has the opportunity of setting forth an example of what can be done when money is invested well, it's invested effectively, and it's invested in and around people who have a passion for what it is we're trying to accomplish. I mentioned earlier that I've never been around a more passionate group of people. And I say that because almost everyone on this call, I'm certain, there have been times when we've not had enough money to do what we need to do, but we've had the passion to get out and make it happen. I want to thank you for that, because that's one of those things that we rarely hear out in the community when we're working with communities. It's just thank you for dedicating your life's work to helping to make the world a bit better place. One of the things that we say here is that nature is a tool for social change. We don't want you to think about the activity as the end. Every activity that you do, every time you bring people into the natural world, it should be considered a beginning, because that's the point in time where they may be able to find their connection to nature. I often tell people, our connections to nature are very unique to each of us. We all have a personal memory that may or may not be someone else's. The thing that is often, when I've asked people to reflect on nature, the thing that they have is in their mind is that there isn't anyone telling them what to see and feel. It's a connection that stays with them for the majority, if not all, of their lives. So I encourage you, as you're building your programs, to think creatively and innovatively. Please don't think in terms of these dollars as being survival dollars that just get us from one month to the next, but instead think of them in terms of dollars that will give us the opportunity to show the potential in people, the potential in programming, the opportunity to actually have the kind of connective relationships with nature that are healing, that are encouraging, that are innovative, and that are driving the human spirit forward. One thing I want to remind you all of this is that when people connect to nature and they have the courage to move forward, it opens up new doors in our communities to talk about quality of life issues that are not necessarily directed at camping or outdoor activities, But through the experiences, we gain the opportunity to have the courage to talk about those things that need to be talked about, and gives communities the spirit to bring forth solutions that are going to outlive us all. This is the beginning, not the end. So think of it in those terms, that every touch, every experience is a new beginning for someone else. And that hopefully at the end of this program, and there will be an end someday, but at the end of this program, that the nation will look at what we've done collectively and smile at that, and also be willing to invest in new ways that perhaps we haven't thought about yet. This is a unique time and a unique moment. Nowhere else in California and nowhere else in America will you find 125 organizations with hundreds of people touching thousands of lives on the same page of bringing nature and empowering people to have access to it. After this round, we may see that number double. And what that means is it puts California in the forefront of action. We're talking about social equity. We're talking about environmental justice. We're talking about the kinds of things that people have alluded to and have had dialogue about. But at the end of this year, all of us collectively will have had people in motion, millions of dollars being spent, and millions of dollars on the horizon to be able to make a true and lasting difference. So if there's anything that we can do to help with that, we want to help you to help them to have a new beginning. And thank you all for supporting this effort. Thank you for your applications in the past. We look forward to reading and your applications in the future. We look forward to seeing what we collectively can do to help change the dialogue of the American conversation. So on that note, I'm going to turn it back over to the team. We're all going to stick here and answer any questions that you may have. We'll stay here as long as you have questions. And again, I hope to see some of you when we have our in-person workshops. And hopefully at those workshops, we can have even deeper conversations, or you can inspire additional conversations for the organizations that are out there. And finally, just again, thank you for the work that you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you again. Team.
Great. Thank you so much, Cedric. We have another good question about reservations for really popular destinations like Yosemite. As some of you may know, sometimes if you take a large group to Yosemite, you have to make the reservation a year or two in advance. The first part of my answer is the question was, what if we get the grant and then we can't secure a reservation? So I think the first part of my answer is maybe you're planning to go to Yosemite in year one of the grant, but the good thing is you do have about 3 years to plan to achieve your program. So maybe you'll have to secure that reservation for year 2 or year 3. If for some reason it is booked for all 3 years of your grant's performance period, there is flexibility. You'll be able to just report that to your grants administration project officer, and just select an alternate location that does have available space, an alternate nature area destination. Of course, unfortunately, there's been some fires, and so one of the realities also is, there's been some proposed destinations that are no longer currently open, and so there is flexibility when, those situations come up to choose a alternate destination for your trip. So great question. Okay, go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, and we can start going live. In the meanwhile, I'll also look at the chat questions. Thank you. Okay.
Go ahead, Bella.
Hi, my question was regarding criteria 1, home base community. So you mentioned that website where you put in your home base and then you can see like the median income and whatnot around the community. But the school that we would be partnering with is a school for mostly unhoused or like all unhoused students. And so our community we're directly serving is going to be much lower than the surrounding area. So is there a way to account for that in the points and in the application?
Yes. Nikki, please go to criteria number 1B. And that's page 17. Oh, you're already there. You are so fast. Go a bit lower. And oh yeah, here it is. Okay, so if you look at the last part where it says briefly describe the challenges not represented in part A. This is your place to tell a story about that type of situation. So we would definitely recommend that any data or any stories, etc., any situations that aren't covered by the data in part A should be described in part B on page 17. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I think Mike was next, maybe. Natalie, was Mike next?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, this is Mike Rosenkrantz with SoCal Adaptive Sports. So we're a small adapted sport organization, and I'm in Palm Desert, California, but we work throughout Riverside County. And I'd love to be able to partner with a larger organization. So I just want to put that out there. You can reach me at mike@socaladaptivesports.org.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we have Allie next.
Hi, thank you guys for your time this morning. It's been really helpful. I just wanted to get super crystal clear, so I apologize if this seems like I asked it already in the chat, about a program that's potentially ongoing. So if we're able to show you that it'll be new students, so like this year's third graders are moving into fourth grade next year, but we'll get new third graders, or my high school internship has 14 members, and as the seniors graduate, I have new freshmen, and we're going to do something new with them, but maybe they've been part of a program with us where we're accessing the outdoors. I just want to get really crystal clear on how we can be the most competitive if we have some sort of ongoing programming.
Yes, it's so. Cedric, do you want to handle that question? Because you did I think your explanation was really spot on.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So one of the things to consider, and is if you look at the origination of the program, it was really geared right to create these new opportunities for the communities that you've selected. Now, if you're going to just do the exact same things with the exact same people, competitively, while that may be eligible, competitively, it may not be as competitive given the pool. So what we would expect, or at least what I would think you would want to expect, is that you see an evolution of programming. Maybe your programming is working with third graders, but maybe it has more multi-generational components that you're putting into it. Maybe it is looking at new sites that are going to build off of, if some of the people are the same residents, that's building off of that experience. If you're showing that you're building capacity within community, that if you're having a richer experience in the near to home reviews, if it's I guess what I'm saying is I think it's important for you to really look at your program and not just have this appear to be a funding source to just do and continue what you're doing, because ultimately the funding is going to go away at some point, right? I mean, it usually does. So how do you take your program and evolve it in a way that it's becoming richer and it's becoming more ingrained? Whether it's more ingrained in your organization, that you are building it in such a way that it's less dependent on outside resources and becomes more of a normal process for doing things. As a community, starting to be able to do more independent activities that you're starting to see, and that's what your goal is going to be. The goal simply has to be, how are you building that capacity so that the community can can have natural world experiences continue when you're no longer there. Is that helpful?
That is, thank you so much.
Okay, great question so far. Who's next? Go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, Mary. And Mary, you can go ahead and click the microphone icon, and it should unmute yourself. Nikki, can you do a, see if you can show folks where the microphone symbol is, or can somebody unmute Mary? Let me try. See if you can unmute Mary.
I'm
Mary
not able
Monk.
to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not able to unmute folks.
Am I unmuted
Oh.
now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Mary.
Okay, thank you guys very much for preparing this program. I'm wondering if this program would cover something for a project that would include an artist who worked with the extremely underserved community and their families for a summer program where each of 3 summers they would come together and create a environmentally related tile mural for the building for the school.
Okay. Yeah, really, great question. So, Nikki, can you please go to the definition of education? I think that's one place where I'll start with answering Mary's question, and then I'll, team, we'll get into the difference between, of course, construction projects versus an art activity. So in the definition of education in the back of the guide, and you'll see in criteria, both in criteria number 3, which is activities in the community, as well as criteria number 4, natural area trips. Education is a word that is in cap letters. So again, if you see a word in cap letters, it means it's defined in the back. And you'll see in item number 1, it says instruction in arts, science, technology, engineering, math that connects nature experiences with environmental stewardship. So that's definitely an eligible activity to have arts instruction that connects with environmental stewardship or nature education. And that could be art at a nature area destination. We've heard of examples where a group of participants went to a lake or a beach and they painted what they saw, or they learn about photography, etc. Or it can be like you're saying, creating art that interprets the environmental stewardship or nature in the community as well. It could be a natural history of the area. The second part, which is a key here, is this program does not fund construction projects. So you have to make sure, like painting a mural is eligible. When it comes to installing art tiles, and as long as it doesn't require CEQA, which is the California, as long as it's not considered a construction project, it's eligible. So art activities are considered eligible as long as construction is not involved.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Great question. Okay, and I think Jessica. I think who's next? Natalie, is it Angie?
Angie, then Jessica, then Heidi.
Great.
So Angie, go ahead.
Oops, thanks very much. So sorry, I had to step away for just a moment, so stop me if you already answered this one. I had typed a question into the chat about eligible costs outside the grant period. And I just had a question about a potential cost that was happening outside the grant period in terms of planning costs that date back to the appropriation date could be eligible for reimbursement. And I ask about that specifically because our organization right now is launching some pretty robust community engagement directly related to planning for this program and a related project. And I was just wondering if we were funded, might some of the engagement, outreach, planning costs that are happening right now to inform this proposal be eligible? And if they are, how would we reflect that in the budget?
Okay, yeah, great question. Nikki, if you could please go to, let's just start off with eligible cost section. If you could please go to page 41. Okay, and on page 41, you'll see planning costs, and it is correct that planning cost for criteria number 2, that's the meeting with, you're going to have to score the most points, criteria number 2. Again, you'll have 2 in-person meetings in the community with a combined 10 youth and 10 adults. It could be like, for example, it could be 10 youth in one meeting, 10 adults in the other, and you would therefore score the max points. And that is eligible. And so we have examples of eligible costs here, like note takers, facilitators, language translators, transportation, equipment, supplies, facility rental. All that is eligible for the planning purpose. If you could all make a note that the appropriation date is July 1st of this year. So if you started planning as of July 1st, all the way through December 13. I wouldn't recommend having a meeting right the day before the deadline, of course, but over the next couple of months, those are eligible planning costs, and you would just build that into your cost estimate. The next thing I'd like to explain is our cost estimate for this round is less detailed than it was for round 1. So if Nikki, if you could please go to the grant scope cost estimate section. And I'll cover this because we had a question in our workshop a few days ago that I might as well get there. Thank you, Nikki. And let's just show the form itself. Okay. So what you can do here is just this is a lump sum cost estimate here. So for example, for your nature area trips, let's just say somebody mentioned Yosemite. Let's say you're planning on taking 3 trips to Yosemite over 3 years. In this case, you would just, under trip destination, you would just write Yosemite parentheses 3 trips, and you just give us your total lump sum cost estimate for that trip, which would include staffing, supplies, equipment, transportation, potentially lodging if it's overnight, etc., food for natural area trips. All that would be wrapped into one lump sum cost, which would be on the right-hand side. So for example, let's just say 3 trips to Yosemite would cost $50,000 on the right-hand side. You would put $50,000, and that is everything necessary to make that trip work between all the eligible cost examples. Now, what you can do for planning is just add in, you can sprinkle the planning cost in throughout your lump sum cost estimate. So if the planning is specific to a specific trip, that could also go into your cost estimate for that trip. If it's for the overall program, you could just keep a record for yourself about the costs that were incurred.
Okay.
And then you could just build it into your lump sum cost estimate on the right-hand side.
Okay,
so this is really a high-level cost estimate. The thing I want to emphasize, let's go back to the eligible cost section, Nikki, about keeping records. The key is, if you're planning on anything that you're planning on charging to the grant, if you scroll down a few more pages, Nikki, yeah, there it is. That third bullet point, you found it. Keep all records and receipts. So If you are selected for a grant, you will go through a grants administration workshop with OGAL's grants administration team, and they have the expertise of the the grants administration process. So they'll explain the record keeping requirements. There is an audit checklist in the grants administration guide, but the real simple way to explain it is keep all records. If you're going to charge labor for time spent on the planning meetings, keep records of the specific time spent, who did it, etc. So there's audit trail. If you happen to like rent a venue, keep a record of that payment and the cost for renting the venue. Okay. And Nikki's also highlighting more information about keeping records. So that is found on what page is that, Nikki? Page 45. Okay, great question. Does that help?
That's absolutely perfect. Thanks so much.
Great. You're very welcome. All right, who's next,
All
Natalie?
right. We have Jessica up next.
Hi. Yeah, I just had a couple questions. I understand that it can't be on any capital items, so no enhancing of the park or anything like that. But can it be to like create art in our park locally as a part of the in the neighborhood or in the community element, as well as then taking them out to other places? And it doesn't have to be outside. Can it include museum visits?
Okay, really good, very good question. Let's start off by we'll start off by saying absolutely creating art in a community, as long as it's not a construction project, it is eligible. So that could be a really good example of an activity in the community to have art classes and art activities for participants in a local park. That's definitely eligible. The next part of the question, since you mentioned museums, Nikki, if you can go to the definition of a natural area trip. And what would not be eligible is, let's just go through the definition of a natural area trip, and I'll let that work for itself. If you see the last part of the definition, the second sentence, where it says, after it says, it says zoos, aquariums, natural history museums, and botanical gardens may also be eligible destinations if the primary purpose is for nature education.
Okay. And then the last little tie in there is can it be a two-part program in that one of the elements of the program is youth experiences, and then the other part is senior experiences?
Absolutely. Let's go to technical assistance for criteria. I believe it's criteria 4, the nature area trips. Let's see, I think it's covered there. Because we understand in some cases, especially with school districts, we'll have some school district applicants that may be focused on a specific grade, like 4th graders. And so we have some guidance of allowing to separate age groups for particular activities and trips. That's definitely eligible.
Okay.
And so you'll see here on the top of, thank you, Nikki, on the top of the technical assistance section for criteria 4, it does give you some examples that validates exactly what you're asking.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, next up is Heidi.
Hello, this is Heidi, West Side Community Improvement Association in Eureka, California.
Hey, Heidi.
Hey, great to hear those friendly voices. Hi, Victor and Cedric. So we want to know if the partnerships have to be for profit or nonprofits.
Yeah, great question. Nikki, scroll down a few more pages to technical assistance for criteria number 7. So On this page, on the top section, you'll have, yeah, Nikki highlighted the word company. So a for-profit agency, a for-profit entity may qualify as a partner, but the key is it has to be, it has to be for something that is not the standard rate that any group or member of the public would pay that for-profit company. And I think the best example is, let's say, item number 4. A really good example to explain, Heidi, is, let's say you're going to take a group of residents from your community center in Eureka to a destination, 50 miles away, and you need a charter bus. If you're going to rent a charter bus, just going to charter bus and paying the standard fee will not qualify as a partner. If you go a bit lower, that is explained in item number 3. Paying vendors, that's like a for-profit business. Item 3, paying a for-profit vendor the full price for a service such as transportation, charter, rentals, lessons, activities is not a partnership. However, if that business will either provide a free service or a discount service that's not available to the general public, that would then qualify as a partner.
Can I add to that, Victor? Just for competitive purposes, think in terms, we get discounts from some vendors that are just, a standard discount or 10 or 15%. You're competing. So the partnerships are something that each entity is contributing to the greater good. So just make sure that it doesn't appear to be a what would have normally been a contract. Does that make sense? Where Disneyland gives you discount prices because you're a group, but it doesn't make them a partner. But someone who's giving you equipment, someone who's knocking a significant amount off of that, and they are contributing and putting skin in the game to help the program move forward, that's probably a more competitive partnership than if it's just a small discount. Does that make sense, Heidi?
It does make sense. One of the plans in this was to do bike tours, places throughout the natural environment here. We've got so many great new trails in the area that the kids would be able to go to later, and the families could go to later without a tour, and hiring a local bicycle tour company to lead the tours at first. So then the kids have access to that later on. And so I was trying to figure out if paying for the bike tours would be an eligible program cost, or if that would be a partnership. And they do partner. They help us keep our bikes we provide the bikes, help us keep the bikes maintained and stuff. But it's been something that's been very difficult for us to find money to pay for. We usually fundraise for it.
Got it. Okay. I can, yeah. So kind of piggyback on what Cedric said, Heidi, if you go to page, Nikki, please go to page 27. Let's go to the scoring rubric for partnerships. And then while Nikki's going there, Heidi, I'll answer your, basically it is definitely an eligible cost, right? I mean, what you're explaining is definitely an eligible cost that can be folded into your grant request. But knowing your organization, you probably have like 20 different partnership opportunities in your region. So I want to emphasize the underlying thing about 3 or more partnerships. So to score the maximum of 8 points, you have to have 3 partnerships that will achieve the goals of criteria 3, which is activities in the community, criteria 4, which is natural area trips, or criteria number 6, which is internships. So, if you have, let's say, Cedric mentioned, if you have like one potential partner where it's, a gray area, like maybe going to a vendor, but you have like 3 other partnerships that would fully meet the spirit of this program, you don't really have to list that vendor as a partner as long as you have 3 that are really going to fully meet the spirit of what Cedric was describing. All you need is 3 to score the maximum of 8 points.
You're awesome. Thank you. But it would still be an eligible cost. Thank you. Thank
That's
you so
correct.
much.
You're very welcome, Heidi.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Norma.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for making this workshop available. It's been very, very enlightening. This probably goes hand on hand with the other participants' question regarding participants. My question would be, I saw that there's a lot of emphasis on youth. So my question is in regards to that, is this more is it more youth oriented in terms of getting extra points or reporting purposes? Does it look better to report higher number of youth as compared as taking entire families to these trips that they may have never been able to go to?
Yeah, really a great question, and this is an example of how your questions help our presentation. So thank you, Norma. Let's see. Let's go to. I mean, the first thing is the legislation for this program. AB 209 did place an emphasis on youth. However, through focus groups and hearings when we developed this program, we heard also what you said. It would be nice to encourage family trips and opportunities for older adults as well. So if you look at let's give an example for, let's just go to nature area trips, Nikki, on page 23. Okay, on highlight number 7. So for each destination, let's say you're looking at for each nature area destination, you're going to give a general description on parts A7, which Nikki highlighted for you, about the age groups. So you could have trips that are for families of all ages. You could have trips that are for youth only, for older adults only, multi-generational. It's all eligible. But in part C, based on the statute, we are required to report how many youth will be served by the program. So Norma, I'll give you a very simple example for how to respond or how to approach this program. Let's use 2 trips as an example. One trip that will be families, and one trip that will be youth only, for example. You're going to have to kind of predict or guess how many youth will be on the trip for families. I know it's going to be tough because after grants are awarded, then you're going to recruit the participants. But just give us your best estimate of how many youth will be part of that trip that involves families. And you're going to add that into your response to part C, which Nikki has highlighted below. Now, what do we do with the information? How will this be scored? Okay, so Norma and everyone, let's go to the scoring rubrics here. And if you look at there you are. And keep that part highlighted, Nikki. Thank you. It's a 2-point difference where you want to have at least one trip, Norma, that you're describing that does involve multi-generational residents like families or older adults. So this is an example where we say don't leave any points on the table. If you were planning on only serving youth, that's eligible, but you're going to leave 2 points on the table here. So you'd want to expand your proposed program to include at least one nature area trip to include families or older adults, just a multi-generational trip. Okay. Now go a bit lower, Nikki, to the next page, on page 24. And let's go to the number of youth participants. Now we will place your proposed number of youth participants on a scale of all applications compared to similar grant requests. And again, that you'll see the term similar grant requests is in cap letters, which means it's defined in the back of the guide. Basically we've broken it down into, I believe, 6 sections for every $100,000. So if you're requesting, $650,000, you'll be competing with folks between $600,000 to $700,000 grant requests. If you're asking for $50,000, you'll be in the group from $20,000 to $100,000. And we'll rank the number of proposed youth you plan to take on trips against others in that similar grant request range. So the answer, Norma, is both. You should plan on having at least one trip involving families / older adults, but there is a 3 to 1 point scale for how many youth you will involve. Now, so that, keep that in mind. Does that help, Norma?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. It makes sense. Maybe with one that it's family oriented or seniors oriented, and the rest probably could be focused on youth, just to give it, also a good number on that rubric on this page that we're looking at right now.
Yes.
Can I add to that, Victor? Norma, one of the things to consider, I teach adult classes as well as youth classes in nature and outdoor recreation. And when we're taking people camping, the thing that we've noticed over the years, and we try to, when we're thinking about programming for communities, think in these terms. What we've found is that the greatest barrier to youth in the outdoors are the adults in their lives. And what we really need is we need to have adults and multi-generations trained and engaged, because otherwise it becomes a one and done outing for the young people. They also are able to influence those adults to begin to want to be engaged in the outdoors. But adults are key because they set the tone of whether or not they're going to engage in those independent experiences that take place as the years go by. So we very much, when you're thinking about intergenerational activities, thinking in terms of how you're building depth and capacity within the community is critical for the long term of your program.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that. And if I may ask a second question regarding meals during trips, may we include also the staff involved in the estimated cost for the meals, or allowed cost in the meals?
Yes. Preparing meals for the trips to natural areas is an eligible cost.
Perfect. So staff it is not only for participants. That would be my question. So also staff can also be included.
Yes. And that's actually, I think Nikki's going to find where that's mentioned in the guidelines. We like to cite the guidelines, for one, to let you know it's actually a written rule to help you feel confident that it's actually a written rule that you can cite in the future, but also to show you all the how to basically work with the application guide. So let's see, where is it? So this page explains. It's a bit higher, Nikki. So if you look at education requirements for all meals, it explains that we basically had to get some guidance to even allow food to be an eligible cost. And since you brought up food, Norma, I just want to reemphasize that we were able to get approval to allow food to be eligible for nature area trips if it's part of an educational health activity. And so there's some guidance in the eligible cost section about what would make food eligible. So the purchase of food, the purchase of rental or food storage for safety compliance, making sure that the meals include educational health activities like providing lessons about how food processing affects climate change or environmental health, minimizing packaging waste, nutrition, learning how to prepare meals. Cedric mentioned the Office of Community Involvement, and we posted a link to their website. But if you haven't been part of that program, I highly encourage it. It is it's a life-changing program where the program also teaches youth how to prepare meals while camping. So it's a really a great program. But yes, Norma, the cost to prepare the meals in the community to then take them with you on nature area trips, including staff time on that. It could be working with youth to help prepare the meals or other residents. That is an eligible activity to prepare for the nature area trip.
Victor, I want to add to that. Norma, also think in terms of if your organization provides per diem for staff, if they are partaking in the food, they simply don't charge you for the charge for a per diem cost on that day. That way, they're not being compensated twice for it, so to speak. So for audit purposes, if you're providing them with the food, then they don't get it as a per diem cost. At least that's the way the state operates and how we operate our program. And if they're the per diem that you might be paying is for that purpose. So if they're doing it, just don't double charge it for your meals. You're providing that meal through the program. And when you're not providing that meal to the program, then you maybe are providing it through your organization. So just something to consider, because the state is real sensitive when it comes to food issues.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Okay.
Thanks, Norma. We have Mary up next.
Okay, excellent. Just real quick here, before the next question, since we mentioned, Cedric mentioned the Office of Community Involvement. Nikki, I posted a link. Can you click on it and show folks a few things here? I wanted to, first of all, give a quick summary of what's called FAM, actually how this whole system works. There's 3 programs offered by the Office of Community Involvement, which have a really strong connection to this program. One is the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program, where adults that go through training can then qualify to have access to a state park campsite, as well as equipment to bring a group of family members or youth to a state park campsite, and it's all free access. Now, the Outdoor Equity Program can provide the transportation funding to the state park campsite. So I definitely encourage you all to take a look at the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program, and then the FAM Camp program, which becomes available for graduates of the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program. It's an excellent system. And we heard from some round 1 grantees that once they went through the Outdoor Recreation Leadership training, they then realized it's actually a cost-effective approach for the grants, and they can even do more trips because they have access to the free state park campsites as well as the free equipment provided. And Cedric can definitely talk more about that.
Well, there have been a number of several awardees that have done just that. They sent staff to the Outdoor Recreation Leadership. They, as an example, I can use Oceans Discovery Institute. They down in San Diego. They went to the Outdoor Recreation Leadership class. They had their staff go. They then did a FAM camp on their own at Cuyamaca Rancho State Park for, I think it was 2 days, 3 days. And then they also most recently came to our Outdoor Youth Connection program. They brought about 40 students from San Diego to our training at Castaic Lake. So they took full, all of that was covered. All of that can be done in the grant. And the important thing about that is those students who go through the class, those adults who go through the class, it's building capacity within your organization so that you have more people engaged and inspired about nature. And they, in turn, as part of Outdoor Recreation, Outdoor Youth Connection, need to do a public service project and and organize an outing for the youth or families in their communities. So there are ways that we can help, and costs can be more effective in utilizing that. And we can get into details more offline if you'd like, or anyone who's interested in those programs. They're available to you as a recipient. They're available to you as a public agency or a nonprofit organization, except there's a cost associated. It's a minor cost associated with that. All funds go back into the program. So it's just something to consider. Thank you for bringing that up, Victor.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? I'm sorry for the next person. It was I think good timing to give you a quick snapshot of that opportunity too. All right, who's next?
I think I was
Yes,
Mary
go ahead.
Monk with the Walter Monk Foundation for the Oceans.
Okay.
That's great information that you just gave us. I'm back to just wanting to clarify, talking about construction projects. I asked you previously about doing an environmentally educational tile project as a summer project for families at a school. So would it need to be something that they did, say, if they plan to eventually have it be on the wall of the building, would it be something they would have to create and put together off of the building and then figure out how to install it, and that installation would not be covered? Or could it be something that they actually applied to the wall of the building as they were doing the art project, and that would or would not be covered?
Yeah, really good question, Mary. So the activity of creating the art tiles definitely would be, as long as it goes back to the definition of education, and so there's some nexus to, as you explained, to nature education. That definitely is eligible. I would ask the school if we don't have enough information right now to know if there's any heavy construction equipment required. If sometimes there may have to be some type of installation on the wall to then allow for tiles to be installed, which could involve heavy construction equipment. So I would go back to the school district and ask them if they would consider this to be a construction project, or if it has to go through any type of construction review by the school district. Then that's a really strong clue to us and to you that it would not be eligible in terms of the actual installation. If the school district confirms that you don't have to go through a special construction review process, a CEQA or other types of construction permits are not required for placing the art tiles on the wall, just like a mural for painting, then it would become eligible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. You're very welcome, Mary. Okay, who's next?
I don't see any other hands raised at the moment.
Okay. Well, we were open till 12:30, so we encourage questions. We'll hang out, but if there's no more questions in the next 5 minutes, we will then close the workshop. So we are here till 11:55, but if you have more questions, we'll continue all the way through 12:30.
Yeah, we actually have a question in the chat, Vic, from Tracy. It says, how can our proposals serving rural communities with smaller population numbers be competitive with larger urban area proposals? Is there a selection process that you'll be using to spread the funding equitably across the state geographically and for rural areas?
Okay, yeah, great question, Tracy. So we can't predict the competition for round 2. But I'll tell you from round 1, there was a really strong spread statewide of where the grants were awarded, and all the way from the most urban communities you could possibly imagine to extremely rural communities where it's a primary a farm worker population or, a small town of, 500 to 1,000 people. So, there's been a spread in round one, and we, if anything is, I think the number of number of participants so far in these workshops is a good indicator that we'll get plenty of applications statewide for round two. So, I think the answer, often in rural communities, incomes are lower. So a rural community may be, competitive under part of criteria number one. But again, we do anticipate a good statewide spread of applications and grant awards in both urban and rural areas. Does that help, Tracy, or do you want to unmute yourself and kind of expand on any question or concern?
Hi, yeah, this is Tracy. I guess the question came up because we had 2 applications in our county during round one in different geographic areas and different community home bases, and only one of those applications were funded, and it was my understanding that they would not have been able to fund 2 in our rural county. So I just wondered if there was anything that we could do to be more competitive and ensure that, because we do serve very distinct populations in our large geographic, our large county that has small rural communities, how can we best position ourselves to be competitive?
Okay. Well, I'll start off. Sure, Tracy. I'll start off by saying congratulations for getting 1 out of 2 grants. That's actually a higher success ratio than statewide applications. We received nearly 400 applications and 125 grants were awarded. So it was roughly a 30% success ratio. So I think you did really well. It is possible to receive multiple grants in one rural county. So I don't know where that information came from, but that it is possible to receive more than 1 grant in a rural county.
Okay, thank you for your answers. It's helpful.
You're welcome, Tracy. You're welcome. Okay, who's next?
Thanks. We have Bella next.
Okay.
Hi. So I'm wondering about on page 48, there's a section called Strengths and Weaknesses. And it was for applicants who did not receive a grant award on the first round can get strengths and weaknesses feedback. So if we have not yet received that feedback, can we still ask for that feedback? And if so, who would we contact?
Okay, great. So Nikki, if you could go to the main OEP website and click on application, the staff contact, so we can show them who the current contact would be. Okay, so on our screen, we have our project officer contacts by county. Your contact will be the green column, the competitive application pre-award project officer. That's the person that can give you feedback on either your round 1 application or what you're planning on doing for round 2 as you prepare your round 2 application. So for example, if your application was for a home base in the county of Alameda, your current contact will be Julianne Coronado. And our team will be there to discuss your round 1 application. Now, I will say some of the criteria has changed from round 1. We went through, based on our team's experience from looking at about 400 round 1 applications, we realized what should be sharpened, what should be clarified. And we also went through focus groups with round 1 applicants, and we had some hearings. So some of the criteria has changed, but I think our team should be able to point out, give you some advice on how to improve for round 2.
Awesome, thank you. Do you think you can put that link in the chat?
Sure. Yeah, Nikki, can
Thank you so much.
Go ahead. You're very welcome. Okay, and then Anne has a question about a link to the list of previous grantees from round one, and we'll post that as well in the chat feature. We'll post a short list without descriptions, and then we'll also post a link to the place where there's a greater description of the round one grants.
And I'll just chime in, when you're on this page, if you want to only look at the OEP round one recipients, you just uncheck State Parks Program. And that will give you, if you scroll down a little bit more, it will give you just the 125 recipients of round one. And you can click on any of these recipients and find out what their project scope and their project deliverables, where it's located, etc. Lee, go ahead.
Hi, I just put this in the chat, but I just wanted to clarify the number of youth served in activities. You want a duplicated number. So we count them each time they attend an event. Is that right?
Great question. Yeah, great question. So so for activities in the community, and the same logic is true for the nature area trips, let's go to the definition of participants in the back of the guide. And I'll provide the definition, and then we'll explain the logic behind it. So Nikki, if you could just go to the definition section, just find the definition of participants. And it'll take us a few minutes to get there. Yeah, we'll get there. But the answer is, in your scenario, yes. Repeat participants would count each time because there's a cost involved. So if you look at the second part of that definition for participants, where it says for reporting purposes and to develop cost estimates, an individual may be counted multiple times if the individual engages in multiple activities in the community and nature area trips. For example, if an individual participates in 5 reoccurring nature area trips, the individual will be counted as 5 participants for cost and reporting purposes. There's a few reasons behind that logic. One is we didn't want to require grantees to report, individual names of participants to kind of protect their own, privacy. But also we recognize that each time you have to take a participant somewhere, whether it's, to pay for an entrance fee in a natural history museum, or whether it's to take somebody to the beach, 300 miles away, we understand that each time that person represents a cost. And so for that reason, participants will be counted each time an activity takes place or a trip takes place. The other reason is there tends to be like changeover where, you could have people that tend to come and go within programs. So yeah, you basically want to, if we go back to the calculation for both criteria 3 and 4 for calculating your participants, there's also a mathematical equation to give further guidance that we added for this round 2 application. So Nikki, if you can please go back to, let's just go back to criteria 3, please. Okay, so part C of criteria 3, it shows you an example of how you are going to calculate your participants. So let's just say you're planning on having 20 days of activities in the community, and you estimate that an average of 30 youth will participate each day. I mean, per day, then you would just multiply the average of 30 per activity day times the amount of days, and you end up with 600. So that would be reported. It does not matter if those 30 youth are the same 30 individuals, or you're going to rotate youth for each activity and there'll be different individuals. We're just looking at the basic number of participants per activity day multiplied by the number of activity days that will be offered. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, who's next?
No other hands raised at the moment.
Okay.
Nothing else in the chat.
All right, we'll do a 5-minute countdown to 12:07, and we'll end at 12:07 unless there's more questions, and we'll continue answering your questions. Any more questions? Feel free to raise your hand. And thank you again, everyone, for your interest, and we look forward to your applications. So take advantage of our team. We'll be here to help.
All right, Zoe, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to reiterate what folks have said. Thank you for hosting this. It's been so helpful. I wanted to get clarity on a question I had put in the chat about 2 hours ago at this point. So we have a program that we've been running since 2021. It's an ongoing program. We plan to run it for as many years as we possibly can. In terms of seeking OEP funding, is that okay to seek funding for an ongoing program as long as the funds we outline, or the program we outline in our application, is held within the timeline of this grant period?
Yeah, great question. So, Cedric, do you want to cover the first part, and we'll go back to criteria number 1B. I'll post an answer for 1B too. Thanks, Cedric.
Yeah, so that sounds like it's something that is doable. However, keep in mind, you would have to select a home base. You'll be serving a particular community, and that most likely would be, or could be, a new community that you're serving. So when you're thinking in terms of, for example, some programs maybe are away from a population. They're wonderful programs. They've been operating for years. Maybe they're 20 miles away from where the community that we're trying to get served. So when they select, you'd have to select the community that you're going to be serving. Make sure that your home base is within that community, and then also you'd want to show us how you're looking at growing your program. How are you looking at enriching that program, enriching the experience based on the experience and that you have had as a provider. So I encourage you not just to. One of the things that we did when we had focus groups a few years ago, we started with the premise that these dollars are not for business as usual. They are the opportunity for all of us to raise the levels of service that we provide and do it in a way that really seeks to empower people and ultimately give them the legs they need in order to operate independently at some point in time, wherever that might be. So when you're thinking in terms of providing the services you certainly can build off of your experiences, but we want to see how these dollars are going to be value added to the people that you're going to be serving.
Okay, thank you, Cedric. And I added in the chat section some guidance of where to provide that information in criteria number 1B on page 17.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
This actually, since it seems that does answer my question, and since it seems like we have time, I actually have another question, if that's
Great.
all right.
Absolutely.
I'm calling in on behalf of Point Reyes National Seashore Association. We're the park partner to the National Park Service at Point Reyes, and the program I'm talking about is actually in partnership with over 20 youth serving organizations throughout the Bay Area. In round one, we supported one of our partner groups in applying for funding because our work is in helping our program partners come out to the seashore. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding that as a park partner or as the park, we're not actually in these communities running programs. We're simply running programs at our park for these partners.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't make sense for us to apply because we're not actually running programs in the community. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cedric.
Yeah, no, I disagree with that. So here's what we're saying is that we would encourage you to apply. And what might be moving you out of your comfort zone would be that you would need to have Point Reyes staff actually moving and going and providing services in the community that you've selected also. And then the program can pay for that. Even though you don't do it now, the program will pay for you to go into that community. Because remember, part of this is also about close to home experiences and how nature is relevant to people in their own communities. So it's a wonderful opportunity to think in terms of expanding services or building on your expertise and adopting or engaging in community in a different way. So it's not that you shouldn't apply. It's that if you're not going to go into community, and have the home base in a selected community, then you're not going to be competitive because the dollars are to be spent in a severely disadvantaged community. And the key piece of this program is the relevance of nature at home or nearby and the relevance of nature far away so that they have a collective experience. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Cedric.
So Zoe, I mean, in your situation, to add what Cedric said, you have the option at your discretion of what you think is best for your mission to be the applicant, and you partner, and you go into the underserved community, and you can have partnerships, with other folks, or you could be a partner for a organization that is based in the underserved community that then brings folks to your destination. So either options are at your disposal. It really depends on like Cedric said, where we disagree is that you should not be the applicant. You definitely could be the applicant and go into a community and have partnerships and stuff like that, or you could be a partner where the applicant brings residents to your destination. So either situation works.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
Sure. Okay, and we had another really good question from Taylor that Kyle, can you explain, let's get into most economical use of state funds, Kyle, and use example of what you've seen in the past with like surfboards, which is a great example between rental, purchase, or lease. And then Nikki, can you go to the section which describes most economical use of state? There you go. Wow, you're quick, Nikki. Thank you.
Yeah, so like an example would be like a grantee who's taking 10 participants surfing for 3 trips. It may be more economical use of state funds to rent 10 surfboards each time rather than buying 10 surfboards.
So in your example, Taylor, one of the key, if you look at what Nikki highlighted on the screen for you in the eligible cost section, one of the, first of all, off-road wheelchairs are eligible. And the difference is what's a more economical use of state funds, to purchase the wheelchairs or to lease or rent them. And here's the key, the last sentence in highlight. This means a grantee will use the most affordable option to complete the outdoor program during the grant performance period by either renting, leasing, or purchasing the supplies and equipment. So in your example, if off-road wheelchairs are necessary for the participants you plan to serve, if you're only taking one trip, then it's unlikely that the purchase of wheelchairs will be the most economical use of state funds. In that case, it's more likely that you're going to want to rent the wheelchairs. Now, if you're planning on taking, let's say, I don't know, 10 or 20 trips, at that point, the cost of the purchase may be more economical use of state funds than renting or leasing. So you're going to have to really do the math to figure out what is a better use of state funds between purchase, rent, or lease of equipment. So great question, Taylor. Thank you. Thanks, Kyle and Nikki, too. Okay, any more questions? Great questions today. Okay, we will stay around for 5 more minutes till let's just say 12:20. If there's no more questions, we'll close the workshop. And again, thanks for your questions so far. And also, I know a few people asked if a copy of the questions and answers from today are available. Team, if you could please post the generic email address, and if you're interested in a copy, please send an email to that address, and we can provide a copy for you of the questions and answers in chat today. And since the question came up, as you develop your cost estimate, please pay attention to the definition of most economical use of state funds. That can help you when you're thinking about purchasing equipment or supplies. And I'll post the definition right now. It is on page 60. All right, 3 more minutes. If there's no more questions, we will close at 12:20.
Hello?
Hello, we hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My chat, for some reason, is not functioning anymore. So what is the generic address that we can request the Q&A?
Oh, great. It is, I'll spell it for you, OGALS at parks.ca.gov. Again, that is OGALS at parks.ca.gov.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Questions are still welcome. All right, we're down to the 1-minute countdown. If there's no more questions, we will close at 12:20, but questions are still encouraged. All right, team, it looks like the questions have expired, so go ahead and stop the recording, and we are closing the workshop. Thanks, everyone.